Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the AdEPT Technology Capital Markets Day. Throughout this presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just simply type in your question and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. These will be available via your Investor Meet Company dashboard, and we will send you an email when they are ready for you to review. I'd also like to remind you that this presentation is being recorded. Before we begin, we would like to submit the following poll and be grateful if you could give that your attention. And I'd now like to hand over to Ian Fishwick, Chairman of AdEPT Technology Group. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. What a great turnout. Anyway, thank you for joining us all. You're going to listen to 7 of us this afternoon, so I'll kick this off as chairman. And on this 7, five are from AdEPT, and then we have 2 visitors, which I'll introduce guests, if you like, in a minute. So you're going to see the full exec team. So Phil Race, the chief exec, will come on in a minute. John Swaite, the CFO, will be a bit later on. Andy Lovett, our chief operating officer, will join us for the Q&A. But you're also going to meet Kevin McEwen, who's managing director of what we now call AdEPT Education North, which is a business that we bought in Doncaster. And you can listen to what it's like to have been acquired by AdEPT and get some feedback on that. But it's great that we've also got John Jackson here. John Jackson is the chief exec of London Grid for Learning. It's probably the only example where all 33 of the London boroughs have agreed to work together, and it's to create digital education, and we're the chief technology partner for them. So this will give you a very good idea of some of the stuff that we do. Keith Jackson is also here because in the middle of a pandemic, we're a tech company. We're still launching products, and our latest partnership is with 8x8, and he'll give you an insight into cloud-hosted contact centres. So hopefully, there's all sorts going on. Now, I'm going to start with a life before COVID just for 2 minutes, because there's a danger we kind of forget that bit. And the point I'm trying to make here is that since 2003, when I formed this, we've done 27 small acquisitions. You know, scale, we're just over 60 million turnover. But the real transformation came in 2015. There was a 5-year spell where we broadened out our services quite dramatically, and we increased our geography. And we're fundamentally a very powerful IT managed service business. And this is one of the reasons why we're doing today, to go behind the covers, to try and explain what we do. Because when we talk to our industry colleagues and say, you know, what do you think of the change you've done? The normal reaction is, but you guys have gone further into IT than anybody we know. And that causes a slight difficulty in that there's not that many tech companies on the stock exchange, and it's very hard to find out what our peer is, because there's nobody quite like us. All right. So basically, we'll just show you what we do. But before we do, I'm just going to look back at the pre-COVID situation. On the right here is a graph that most people would be very happy with. It's 17 consecutive years of rising EBITDA. But if you look at the red one on the left, that's possibly even more interesting. After the recession in 2008, when it got to 2010 and things started to pick up again, we then went on a very long run. We had a decade, an entire 10 years of increased earnings per share. Now, you'd have thought that that's not that unusual, but actually it's phenomenally unusual. There's over around about 1,000 companies on AIM, right? And there's only 3 companies in any sector that manage to do that. And it just shows you how hard consistent growth is. And before you ask me who the other 2 are, because clearly we're one of them, it was IMART and Churchill China. And the key point I want to make is that that's clearly a company that has got very strong financial disciplines, right? The whole model is based around, we want 75% of the revenue to recurring. In fact, it's margin, not revenue, to be honest. And we want capital expenditure kept to 2%, so that it's a cash machine. So even in a pandemic, it still generates loads of cash. And that kind of business doesn't become a bad business overnight just because you've got a lockdown and you can't get on site for a few weeks. Okay, right. Now, I've been running tech businesses for over 30 years, and I'm going to talk you through the 4 main bits, and you'll understand why this is typically what most tech companies would like. On the right-hand side, you're always going to have a heritage product, something that's had its heyday, it's in managed decline, and you actually use it as a cash cow to fund other things. For us, in the low teens percentages of what we do is fixed line telecom. BT's announced they're closing the network in 2025, and therefore we're actively migrating those customers to newer cloud-based technologies. Second one, in terms of support services, those are products that we've sold over many years. We have a vast amount of on-premise equipment, particularly phone systems in places like councils, hospitals, and to be honest, if it's paid for and it works, you don't swap it straight away. Just because somebody brings out a new car next month doesn't mean we all suddenly sell our cars and move on. It's the same thing in terms of this kind of stuff. Eventually, it will migrate, but it'll be there for a long time. Is it likely to be our growth engine? No, but it's a very profitable part of what we do. Now, when you're an IT company, you have to have technology products. You take on a new customer and there's projects, and you're going to have to do some hardware, say some server refreshes or something, and there'll be some software licenses that you'll need to buy. But it's not really what we target. That's really the sprat to catch the mackerel for us, really, because what we're trying to do is this block on the left-hand side of the screen, the cloud-centric strategic services. That's where all the exciting growth area is. And it's not just the bits that you can provide from the cloud, but it's all the connectivity to the cloud and all the security that sits all around that. And you'll hear many examples through the day as to how we're focusing on that piece. Now, let's just have a look at the pandemic, right? Because all companies have fared differently. It's been incredibly busy. We're very proud to say that our education team helped to move over 4,000 schools to remote schooling. That's a phenomenal activity. And nearly half of all the schools in the UK weren't ready for the pandemic, not surprisingly, and they weren't set up to do remote schooling. And therefore, DfE, the Department for Education, launched an emergency scheme to try and help them. Well, we've helped over 500 schools in the pandemic move to the cloud for the first time. And if you looked at the league table suppliers, we actually topped that. And the reason why we topped that primarily is because there's only a handful in the UK who can supply to schools both the Google education solution and the Microsoft. And therefore we can turn up and just say, show us what you've got already. We'll advise you on what's the best way forward. And that's been very, very successful. And going across the slide, it was massively busy in those first 2 or 3 weeks. There was a tenfold increase in support calls. And they were all what I call the small nitty-gritty stuff like, can I have a laptop? Can I have a license? We've got to get moved to home. But what was interesting was that we coped with it. Because unlike most people, I suppose we eat our own dog food, really. We already had phone systems that we could use from anywhere. They weren't premise-based. We already had Microsoft Teams for everybody. So despite that massive increase in support calls, we handled it. And interestingly, carrying across the slide, we might look in more detail later, but some customers have downsized, you can't deny that, okay, but perhaps not as much as we expected. Yes, we've had the issue where we couldn't get on site to install things, but again, that eased quite quickly. Now, coming down to the bottom part, obviously the government announced a very expensive furlough scheme. When it first started in lockdown 1, at its peak, we had 74 people on furlough. Now, the reason why we did that is because we have loads of IT technicians who work every day on school fixing things, and obviously they couldn't get on site. So initially, we put them on furlough. Within 6 weeks or so, we had nobody on furlough because it was quite clear that they were still incredibly needed to help the new environment, right? So all through lockdown 2, all through lockdown 3, we've had nobody on furlough. But we did, in the first pass, take 250, perhaps 300k in grants, and therefore we followed what we think is good corporate guidance and governance, which is not only do we not pay a dividend if we've had some government money, but the exec team themselves get no bonuses this year, right? So we're trying to behave like a good corporate citizen. And what's been nice is that even in this environment, we're still winning new logos, and some significant ones, like, we've taken on the Royal Borough of Greenwich, Worcestershire NHS. Now, there's a danger in this conversation that we talk a lot about education and public sector, but it's about half of what we do. Half is commercial, so there's other good stuff in digital media and private health, etc. We're pretty proud of the voice solutions that we do for doctors' surgeries, and we helped 4 of them to learn how they could manage consultations from a distance. And some of you may well know that I have 2 other part-time jobs. I mean, one's as an advisor to the Cabinet Office. Like, the second one is Inopsis is a specialist trade association for all the suppliers of digital services and infrastructure to the UK public sector. And I've been the commercial director of that for many years. Now, the relevance of that is we often host events for things like, we did one recently for NHS Digital. Now, that's the techie part of the NHS. And I said to them, you know, what's your planning assumption post-pandemic? And their answer was quite interesting. They said, look, we're quite shocked at how well the doctors managed to get this hang of video consultations, because they were very anti before the pandemic, but you know, they had no choice when you couldn't get patients into a surgery. But they're itching to get back to seeing people face to face, which you'd guess. But they've also realised that parts of what they didn't really need people queuing in a surgery. And they reckon that about a third of all appointments will carry on being by video. Now, when we try and talk to a finance director, until last week I had 3 kids at home and a school teacher, 5 of them were trying to share the same broadband. It was a nightmare. Well, it's the same thing that's happening in GP surgeries, where 5, 6, 7 doctors try and do consultations at the same time. So it's almost certain that all NHS buildings in the UK will now be upgraded. And that's one of a million examples that Phil will take you through, where, yes, people have got through the pandemic, but it's been a bit inelegant at times. And there's going to be a clean-up next. And that's one of the reasons why I'm very happy in the position that we're in. Right. Now, I think this slide's really important, right? Because this shows you our customer base by revenue split into what industrial sector are they in. So if you look at the big ones, education, healthcare, government, financial services, you'll see what's not there. So all the problems are in retail shops. Well, you spot it eventually. It's a little yellow one, about 2/3 of the way down the right. Leisure is near the top. Now, it's not an accident that they're small targets for us, because the pandemic, in many senses, didn't do new things. It accelerated some things. So the idea that the high street's not a great place to be has been there for ages, right? So your key takeaway from this is a lot of the sectors of the economy that's got real problems from the pandemic are not our customers, deliberately, and never were. Right. Now, I'm going to hand on in a minute, but I'm going to come back and share the hello, Phil. I'm going to share the Q&A function at the end. So let's just do the reminder. On the top of your panel, there's a button called Q&A. Don't click chat, click the one that says Q&A. If you type them through, I'll pick them up and we'll try and pick them again at the end. Chief Executive, Mr. Phil Race, hello, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ian, for that introduction. I'm going to set the scene for a case study, and the case study is one of our largest customers, London Grid for Learning, where we do a whole range of different things. I'll set the scene in a couple of slides, but just to give us some background, we are very proud of the fact that we have this 50-50 split between the public sector and healthcare marketplace, and then the commercial marketplace filling the other 50%. And this has stood us in very good stead over the last 12 months. It's made us an incredibly resilient business, because you've seen very different demands from those different marketplaces. That having that balance has been hugely beneficial for us. And you can see here we have a great range of customers, but also a great range of frameworks that we're part of. You have to win positions on these frameworks, and what this means is that we get to see tenders from the public sector coming through those frameworks. So a really important part of our DNA, and we've been successful in winning a number of different projects and assignments through those frameworks. So a great bedrock for the business. A little bit about what AdEPT does and takes to this marketplace. Within the circle are the on-premise services that we provide. And it's great to be able to go to customers and sort of walk around their operations and point to various aspects of their IT estate and explain what we can do for them. And we have case studies across all of these different dimensions, whether that's providing Wi-Fi. We've done Wi-Fi projects in the NHS for drop-in centres, for example. So some great case studies there. For libraries, we've done Wi-Fi. In terms of technician support, we support literally hundreds of schools in terms of on-site technicians support. We do on-site network infrastructure. So a whole host of different services with great case studies behind them. But almost more importantly, we connect this on-premise infrastructure to the outside world, where increasingly applications, services, security platforms are held. So we are able to provide support for this hybrid world that our clients are increasingly moving to. And that includes voice, and we'll come on to that later with our 8x8 case study, where we're providing unified communications to a number of different organisations. So a little bit about London Grid for Learning to set the scene for the interview with John Jackson, the CEO. So LGFL was set up back in 2001. It was originally a buying group, but has grown since that time to provide a huge range of services to a very substantial number of schools. There are about 24,000 schools in the UK, and we service some 5,000 of those. So a very strong marketplace for AdEPT, where and through LGFL, we're providing secure platforms to safeguard the pupils within schools, but also provide a whole range of other services that teachers and pupils can get access to, whether that's backup or email or other services. So a really great case study for us. And I thought the best way to bring that to life for our investors is to have an interview with John Jackson, and here's the results.
I'm delighted to talk about our partnership with AdEPT. For those of you who don't know LGFL, we're all about the advancement of education. We run actually some of the world's biggest EdTech projects, which might be a surprise to some people. We've got one of the world's biggest school fiber networks. We run some of the biggest cloud deployments in the world. We have a huge impact on teaching and learning in this country. And indeed, you know, we've got several key passions as well. One of them is, of course, is keeping children safe. So we protect over 1.4 million children from nasty things that go on the internet and provide security. We support schools with cloud. So, for example, we work with AdEPT very closely on accelerating Office 365 and Google G Suite. And we've got lots of big partners. We partner with the likes of Google, Microsoft, obviously AdEPT, Virgin Media. And we've also got a partnership with over 100 small to medium-sized enterprises that help us transform teaching and learning in this country. Well, originally, Grids for Learning were conceived to provide procurement aggregation. So they bought things at scale and delivered content to schools. It was very much a kind of put the pipe in and suck down the content. Over time, that relationship's changed. I mean, when I came into the job in 2016, I sort of hadn't seen education really move on and harness the possibilities of digital innovation in teaching and learning. Hadn't seen the impact of technology on children's lives that I expected, because my background is digital transformation. So I was looking at education thinking, it's hardly changed in the last sort of 14, 15 years that the grids have been around. So my mission since 2016 has been to fundamentally change the contribution of digital in education. So we've really focused on really big things. One is, how do we get cloud computing into the schools and accelerate that at huge scale? So, for example, in the very early days, we were championing things like Office 365 and cloud computing. We were one of the first cloud champions across the globe, working with Microsoft on things like Minecraft. The second thing is about putting the technology into schools to enable that digital technology to be successful. There's no point in trying to have cloud computing if you can only get there on a B road. So we've been installing massive fiber technology into schools, so you can suck down all that fantastic content and consume it in the classroom. So as I say, you know, in London, for example, across the UK, our schools now generally running at a minimum of 100 meg in primary, which is big, and 500 to a gig at least in secondary. No one else is doing that in the UK at the sort of scale that we are. And of course, also what we've had to do is provide security and protections, you know, for all that. As the schools have changed their consumption of technology, we've had to put more layers of defense in and more security. And again, I'm very proud of the fact that we've done an awful lot of that with AdEPT, of course. First of all, it's important to say that we've had a long-term and enduring partnership, and I think, you know, it's been critical to both our successes, really. Partnerships need to constantly innovate, constantly adapt, and constantly change to reflect the environment that's going around them. And LGFL and AdEPT have done that. So we started off in the very early days, I think back in the late 90s, and AdEPT were providing, in a different guise, a managed service into one of the local authorities called Kingsnet. And then it evolved in the noughties to more of a managed service provision for us. And then as from about 2010 onwards, it's really accelerated into cloud, security, protection, and a much more diverse and rich range of products. I think what's been really important in that relationship is it's adapted. You know, it started off doing one thing, which is very narrow, and now it's doing a much broader range of things. The second thing has been product innovation. You know, you don't want to be stuck with a partner who isn't innovating and changing and bringing on new products. And again, we've seen some wonderful innovations over time. You know, for example, the security and authentication platforms that we use, USO, Mail Protect, which is protecting email in the cloud. A lot of these things were developed, you know, way back in time, well ahead of the rest of the market. And that pioneering sort of innovative tradition has kept going to today. And if you stand back and look at COVID, for example, around 50% of the schools in the UK were not on cloud platforms at the start of COVID. Now, a lot more of them are. And AdEPT and LGFL have been at the centre of accelerating that cloud adoption in schools through provisioning those cloud platforms. We run, for example, the National Demonstrator Programme for the DFE, which is helping schools to harness the technology, Katie. So, you know, and we've both been in the middle of that. We've just done it, got on with it despite COVID, and made a huge impact on teaching and learning in this country. Yeah, I mean, gosh, where to start? There's so many of them. But let's start with the first thing that's been really important is that we're a charity. We're not for profit. We reinvest back into education. So one of the first things we have to do is save lots of money. And that partnership at scale delivers great value product to schools. Because we buy at such big scale, because we delivered it at such scale, we can deliver that back into schools. And that's enabled us to release lots of savings and lots of money to schools. The second thing has been the network. You know, there's no point in connecting schools nowadays to a B road. They need a motorway. They want to be pulling down all that wonderful cloud stuff. They want to get immersive in their learning. They want to do remote learning. They want to do blended learning. They want to do collaboration at massive scale. And again, we've done that with AdEPT. So, for example, this will surprise you. During the middle of COVID, LGFL, Virgin Media Business, and AdEPT, we upgraded 2,500 schools. 2,500 schools in the middle of COVID with really fast internet. We more than doubled it during the course of COVID. Imagine that. Who else has done that in the world? We did. So, you know, we've delivered a fantastic network that's world class. I think the third thing, as I said earlier, was that acceleration of cloud platforms. You know, more than 50% of schools, I believe, were not on cloud platforms like Office 365 or G Suite prior to COVID. Most of them now are. And both of us have been, as I say, right in the middle of that. And then you've got to think, you know, the changes that are going on in terms of security. You know, you can't connect schools and safeguard children in a random way. You've got to be able to scale platforms and architect them in ways that are really at the leading edge of thinking and technology creativity. And again, that partnership with AdEPT, we've done that. So, for example, our filtering solution, believe it or not, I think processes 1.2 billion URLs every day. Just think about that. There's millions of emails passing every day through our mail filtering platforms that we've delivered. These are hugely significant implementations, you know, that are really enabling schools to benefit from the innovation in the classroom with all this digital stuff and this enhanced use of data to support assessment and different ways of working. So it's really, really exciting. So we've done a fantastic job together, I think. I think personally that we've stood out worldwide on education technology in this country. You know, there's a lot of negativity around COVID. I think one thing we should be very proud of is our collective contribution as an industry, as a partnership, to taking forward education in this country during this crisis. Just think about some of the numbers. You know, we have, you know, massively accelerated connectivity and bandwidth for cloud. You can't make use of the cloud, as I say, on copper. You need fiber and you need massive capacity. We've achieved it. You know, we've scaled cloud in a way that's not being done anywhere else in the world. I don't believe anywhere has achieved that sort of volume shift from hardly anybody using it in some respects to nearly everybody using it in the space of 12 to 18 months. That's huge. We've been able to support remote learning, collaboration, changes in teaching practice, so children, you know, as far as possible, didn't get left behind. Imagine that for one moment. You know, who else has been able to achieve that? And one of the things that I'm particularly passionate about through this has been bridging the sort of what I call the digital divide. Very early on in the COVID crisis, I recognized that there wasn't going to be enough equipment in schools to support a remote learning strategy. You know, DfE were doing their best, but it was always going to fall short. So, you know, we went out to market for up to 2 million devices. Now, think about that. A tiny charity goes to the market and says, we're going to buy up to 2 million devices. I think everybody just laughed at first. They said, this guy can't be serious. Well, I am. And we actually, we've moved to one of the biggest box shifters in the country now. I think we're only second behind the UK government in terms of device provision into schools. And again, you know, AdEPT have been very key to all of this because they've been providing the service desk, the managed support, people have been ringing the helplines, people have been wanting remote access, people want to back things up, you know, all the things that I'm not dealing with day to day, all the sort of keeping it running, keeping the show on the road. I mean, AdEPT have been brilliant throughout all of this. So I think we should, you know, be very proud. I mean, the UK, far from getting left behind, I think we're proving that we can get ahead of the curve. And I think, you know, the stuff we've done with vaccinations is just another example of UK tech companies actually innovating and accelerating ahead of everyone else. I think it's something we should be very proud of. Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, you know, when I sit back and think about this, you know, we were faced, all of us, with a crisis that we'd never experienced before. This could have caused us all sorts of difficulties. If we'd worked with old style working where, you know, everything needed 40 pages and 100 pages of requirements to get anything done, or, you know, needed a long-term strategic plan or risk registers with everything documented in them, we'd get nowhere, right? One of the things that's important about this partnership is we understand each other's strengths and capabilities, and we've been able to harness those to meet demand. So we've scaled up remote working, we've scaled up cloud deployment, the help desk scaled up to meet increased calls from people needing support. That flexibility, that adaptability, and that innovation is what is absolutely critical to that relationship between LGFL and AdEPT, and why we've been so successful together in supporting schools through this pandemic. Gosh, I'm excited. You know, I stand back, and as I said, you know, I think we should lead the world in education technology. We really should. You know, we've got some fantastic and innovative UK companies. We've proven in COVID, you know, we can stand the test and we can do better than the rest. And, you know, what are the key things that make me very confident about the future? Well, first of all, you know, we've got a fantastic network that we've built together. You know, we have a network that can meet the future needs of education in this country. No problem at all. The second thing is that we have these protections and safeguards. You know, you can't have children accessing the internet, home or you know, at school, in a not safe way. Yet we've done that. So we've got a fantastically safe network, 12 layers of protection that we've built together to keep children safe. That's really incredibly important. The third thing is, look, we've been right in the middle of helping schools change. Now, one of the things that's really important about the teaching and learning is I always put a picture of an iceberg up when I talk about digital transformation, because it's easy. The top bit's easy. You can see what's above the surface. I call that adoption of technology. You can buy it, right? It's dead easy to buy tech. That's the easy part. The bit that's below the surface, the 9/10, is the absorption of technology. And again, LGFL and AdEPT are helping schools not only adopt the technology, they're helping them absorb the technology, whether or not that's helping them with their cloud platform migrations, or, for example, their professional development. Think about this, right? You know, we are one of Google's biggest partners on teaching and learning and professional practice. I think we run some of the biggest training courses on Google technology anywhere. I think we've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people turning up for sessions on cloud computing. So I'm very confident about that. So I think what we've also demonstrated is we can be trusted through this crisis. You know, trust's important. You don't want to be partnering up with people who don't deliver, right? And you know, we have delivered together through this crisis where we've needed to bring in new innovation for remote learn. We've done it. Where we've needed to accelerate cloud, we've done it. Where we've needed to support schools adopt this technology, we've done it. Right along, so we tick all the boxes. We are reliable, trustworthy, and innovative. So I think we've got the badge, hopefully. And what's important to say as well is that we're seeing growth. You know, one thing that we're certainly experiencing now, I've never seen so much interest in what we do as a partnership and the things that we deliver. I really haven't. All the time, people want our newsletters, they want our bulletins, they want our training, they want our help desk, they want our broadband, you know, they want our filtering, you name it. So I'm very optimistic about the future. It's not steady state. This is about acceleration now and growth.
Hello. I hope you found that interview of interest. It does show the wide range of services we're delivering to the marketplace, the fantastic relationship we have with one of our most significant customers, and the impact we're having on several thousand schools across the UK, an important part of our client community. So brilliant story there from John. So I'd like to move and change gear a little bit. We'd like to talk about partnerships. Partnerships are absolutely crucial to us. Our DNA is to bring the partner innovation and the partner capability to our customers. And before I sort of talk about 8x8 specifically, I'd like to just cover the mega trends in the marketplace, because this next partner that we're going to introduce you to is addressing some of these mega trends. So talking sort of from the digital Britain, as John was talking about the need to replace copper with fibre to improve speed of data exchange across the UK. It's a big revolution that's happening at the moment, massive investment in infrastructure, and our job as providers is to connect that infrastructure to our customers. So a massive change there, big mega trend. And then second point here is that working from home piece. There's an oft-used phrase which is there's been 10 years worth of revolution that happened in the space of 12 months, accelerated by the COVID pandemic. And certainly we've seen that with the likes of Zoom and Teams, and we're playing a role in that, and that is impacting our customers. So a massive mega trend there. Third is technology as a service. There's huge rise in demand for cloud and communications and technology as a service. So increasingly, organisations, yes, they have on-premise technology or technology in the home, and they're accessing through services different operational platforms. So a real switch from buying commodity to integrating that capability and then delivering that as a service out to the outside marketplace. Third point, the BT switching off of the UK copper network. This is much trailed. 2025 is the deadline they've set themselves. And this means that copper connection that you have at home or in business, that twisted pair piece of physical connection, that is being removed. You will not have that service anymore. And that creates an opportunity for us to talk to all of our customers that still have that infrastructure and engage on a big story about how we can take them forward. And the final point is this cyber security piece. So you need to wrap this increasing technology landscape in a safe environment, and that's the cyber security wrapper. So you've got these massive mega trends, and these are areas where AdEPT is placing emphasis and doubling down. So as part of that, we work with partners, and we have some tremendous partners, and we have some great relationships with those partners. We choose them carefully. We don't proliferate partners. These are an important part of our DNA, so we want to put as much effort into them as they put into us. Crucial to our DNA. And the most recent partnership we've struck is with an organisation called 8x8. This is an organisation that provides cloud-centric telephony, communication capability for contact centres. And since signing that partnership up, again, during lockdown, we've actually already had some great success with that, signing 16 new clients since we signed that partnership, which I think is a great reflection on their product, the market demand, and our ability to take that product to market. So a really good case study for the AdEPT business and the AdEPT team. My final slide on this is to show, this is a Gartner quadrant, which is an assessment of different market offerings. Gartner are a very well-respected research group, and 8x8 is one of the very few organisations that are classed as leaders in this unified communications as a service marketplace. And that means that AdEPT now has the ability to offer 3 of the key offerings out into the marketplace. So we can consult with our clients, identify what they need, and then bring these options to bear. But 8x8 has been a very successful solution as part of that journey. So what I'd like to do is to introduce you to Keith Jackson, who's the European Vice President of 8x8 and a key relationship of ours. So Keith, I'll let you introduce 8x8, and then we'll have a little chat at the end of your presentation.
Thank you very much, Phil, and I appreciate you giving us the slot to present with you guys today. I have lost the slides, and there they are. Thank you very much. Perfect. So what I thought I'd start with, just for those of you that don't know who 8x8 are, is just really our organization by the numbers. 8x8 is a communications provider that's been around for the last 18 years, and we've really been trailblazing what was then known as the VoIP market, right? We've delivered nearly 250 patents around things like video compression to make sure that in low bandwidth environments, we can deliver high quality video. Making sure things like voice quality over the public internet is as high quality as we can physically take. And because of all the investment we continue making in our voice, video, contact center, and CPaaS platforms, we've landed ourselves as the only vendor in the marketplace that lives in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for unified communications, as well as the Gartner Magic Quadrant for contact center as a service, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. 8x8 has just over 80,000 business customers sitting on the platform. These are entities that have chosen 8x8 as their communications platform. But we've also got more than 20 million users that operate on our free video platform that we released to the market as the pandemic hit the UK and our global community. One of the things we're most proud of is our employee footprints in Europe. We're a Silicon Valley headquartered organization out of San Francisco, but over a third of our employees are based here in the UK and across Europe. With a TAM of 60 billion in the global market underneath just the UC and the CC space, that's what's enabling us to get to the kind of year-on-year growth figures that impacts our near half or just over $500 million turnover in a year. We've also got a monstrous footprint globally with 15 offices in over 10 countries, and this helps us with the global footprints and deployments that we work alongside with the team at AdEPT for. This is a slide that I took from the very first meeting that we had with Phil and Ian, and it's the 3 pillars of how we approach all of our partnerships. And I think for us internally, the one thing that really came across from the AdEPT team was that the pillars that we look at are how we go to market versus how AdEPT go to market were very, very similar. It's always customer first. It's making sure that the vendor evaluation is done for the customer specific environment. But also, we loved the way that the AdEPT team had real focus around the enablement program that we bring. So from a pre-sales and a post-sales standpoint, their teams have completely certified across the pre-sales and post-sales. So all sales engineers, the pre-sales guys, deployment and support are 100% certified by 8x8. And that's led to what we see as a lasting partnership. We have the exec team from AdEPT sits on our UK partner advisory board. And that's there to make sure that we always find those small efficiencies that we can get in the market. So make sure our GTM is as aligned as we can physically get, but also finding out from the people in the street, what do we need to change about the platform to continually keep adapting. And then you get products like Microsoft Teams. So when we launched our free meetings platform when COVID pandemic kicked in, we got to just north of 23 million users inside of several weeks as the pandemic came. If we have a look at what Microsoft Teams adoption rate was like, it was tenfold on that. The limitation around the Teams platform was their global reach around telephony. So we've worked incredibly closely with the team at AdEPT for a portion of those 60 new logos that have come on board that have adapted the direct routing integration that 8x8 has with Microsoft Teams. So this enables things like quality of service and enables global routing, but also all of the analytics and professional services that both of our teams wrap around a customer are now available through a Teams interface, but utilizing the enterprise-grade platform that 8x8 has delivered. We're also one of the only players in the market that have both a direct routing option, but also a certified contact center environment, which is a massive play for us in the market because this is something Microsoft do not have on their own. When we start moving this into global customer references, this is where the harmonies really start coming across 8x8 and AdEPT. When we had a look at what entities we already had as an organization, as customers, and what AdEPT had brought to market, we found a lot of harmonies there. And when we start looking at that Teams piece, taking a company like Mediterranean Shipping, which is over 25,000 users globally and 2,500 seats of contact center, all leveraging their Microsoft Teams integration that we've got. But more specifically came the harmonies around public sector. Over 35% of our revenue in UK is made up of public sector, which is very close to what the AdEPT team have got. And again, when we start looking at the referenceability that 8x8 UK already had in public sector with organizations like HMCTS, Her Majesty's Courts, and then the logos that the AdEPT team have brought on with Kent Community Health, Dartford and Gravesham, and also University of Cambridge, which is a common customer. And the beauty about the partnership is 8x8 is purely a software provider. We don't do connectivity, we don't do security, we don't do network assessments, etc., etc. And with the true value that AdEPT bring to our marketplace and to our customer base, the values that we keep finding for the wins in the customer segment is huge. So Phil, I believe you're going to ping a couple of questions across to me now.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Keith. I think hopefully that lets the audience know, there's real joint commitment here and a real common ground and a great opportunity for us to see. So I'd like to sort of take it from the sort of generic to the specific. Tell me about your experience with AdEPT. What's it been like working with us as a company?
It's been a breath of fresh air, if I can say that, to be honest. We take a look at how quickly you guys adapted to the enablement program that I spoke about earlier on. People need to remember this has all been done remotely. We've had very few face-to-face visits. I think the first 2 meetings we had were face-to-face. Everything post that was over video environments. So taking and training an enablement program for sales, solution delivery, solution architects, and the support guys, and seeing the dedication that your team have shown to getting through all of that remote learning and that virtual instructor-led learning, that's what's then built on the momentum that we've started seeing. When we see a partner go from initial partner contract to first customer sign within weeks rather than months, that just shows the success that AdEPT are bringing. And 16 logos across commercial and public sector in that short amount of time, and with the pipeline growth that we're seeing out of you guys, that's what makes you guys different in this market.
Yeah, and I think that's a good reflection that, as I said before, we take partnerships very seriously. We don't sign up partnerships in an unfocused way. You know, we very much we sign it up with the intent of really putting some effort behind it. So next thing, it would be great to sort of bring this to life with a bit of a case study. So have you got one for us to share, Keith?
I do. The first one that sprung to mind was Fortis Clinic, right? This was a legacy Martel customer that was out of support, kept having downtimes. And the solution that your team put across them for the couple hundred contact center users that they were looking at across a multiple site delivery with remote users, that deployment that we watched you guys do and our PM sat side by side on that delivery was executed flawlessly. You know, being able to deliver a solution like that completely remotely with the technical expertise that your team had gained in a very short amount of time, we couldn't have been more impressed, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and it's not, as you say, not a trivial project. You know, you're impacting quite a number of users with new technology, but also a testament to the cloud centric nature of your offer, that it's relatively easy to deploy. Not too easy. We still need to win some of that professional services revenues, but no, great to see. So my final question for you, Keith, is really about the future. We've seen a massive transformation over the last 12 months, but really curious to get your thoughts on what's around the corner, what's in the future.
I think the one thing that this pandemic's brought to us is that rise of, yes, cloud as a service, but it's not anything as a service. So when we look across your guys' portfolio, you've got your security environments, you've got contact center, you've got UC. Customers now realize that everything is cloud-based, right? We've seen that rapid acceleration of cloud adoption led normally by the public sector, which was very surprising for us, right? Hundreds and hundreds of contact center users got dragged out of your normal contact center environments in a building to remote, like we've all been working in the last year. And when we have a look at the opportunity for you guys in that space, you've lived in that legacy world, you've transferred into that pure cloud vendor that now has the expertise to transition those pieces across. You guys are the type of partner that are going to continue to succeed. Because in a pure cloud world, you've got to have your feet on both sides of that camp. You need to understand the old in order how to migrate it to the new. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the reasons why our mission is uniting technology, because we also see that organizations need to integrate all of these various different solutions to create common platforms, and that's what we're here to do. Keith, I'd just like to say thank you very much for taking part in this Capital Markets Day. Great to have you as a partner, and looking forward to seeing the relationship go from strength to strength.
Loving working with you guys, Phil, and thanks very much for the invite.
You're welcome. Okay, the next part of our Capital Markets Day, we thought we'd have a presentation from John Swait, our CFO. So, John, over to you.
Thanks, Phil. Good afternoon, everybody. So, for the benefit of those who are not familiar with AdEPT, this is just a brief summary of the key characteristics of the sort of business model that we operate. We are a high recurring revenue business. 75% plus of our revenue streams in recurring products and services, which gives us excellent forward revenue visibility. That's a key characteristic we also look for in any acquisition target that we're looking at. It's something we consider very important and is part of the value of our business. There's additional resilience within the revenue stream that's provided by the split of the customer segments that we've got. With 45% of our revenue in public sector and healthcare, and the other 55% in commercial and private businesses, it's a great blend. And as we'll see when I come to the half year numbers, it's provided quite a bit of stability and resilience for the business during the COVID pandemic. Broadly, our gross margins are in a range along with most other peers in our sector. That's because a lot of the pricing is similar at a wholesale basis. But the difference between AdEPT and some of those other peers is the operating efficiency of the business. That means we're able to generate sector-leading EBITDA margins of between 18 and 21%. As Ian referred to earlier, we are a cash machine, so what we're looking for is EBITDA conversion into operating cash flow. Typically, we're operating in a range of 80 to 100%, and the movements there will be on the timing of customer payments and suppliers around year end, but it's all about generate the profit, turn it into cash. We're a non-infrastructure business. So we leverage the supply relationships we have with those tier one suppliers, the likes of 8x8, etc., which means the CapEx like business model, we're only spending about 2% of revenue on CapEx. So that operating cash flow is turning into free cash flow. We're a high free cash flow yield business, typically in the range of 5 to 8% on a levered or unlevered basis. And we've been using that cash flow to fund the acquisitive growth of the business, or returning money to shareholders through the form of dividends. So as Ian showed these graphs earlier, and it's just demonstrating the consistent financial performance of the business. That's underpinned by an experienced director and senior management team, which has seen us complete and fully integrate 27 earnings enhancing acquisitions, which is slightly unusual in our sector. Many people can do the acquisitions, but they haven't fully integrated them into the business. We are now a fully integrated business. So this slide provides a summary of the key highlights from the September 2020 interim announcement. There's a strong focus on cash generation, but also the visibility of revenues and margins continued. 78% of the revenue came from recurring revenue streams, with the underpinning of that revenue in terms of public sector and healthcare. 45% of the revenue in that period was in public sector and healthcare, which is particularly important during the COVID period, because we've continued to see those customers buying new services and renewing their services. We do have an element of our business which is in the legacy fixed line piece, which is in the structural decline. It's around 18 to 20% of the business currently. And for us, it's about managing the transition across to the next generation managed service solutions that Ian referred to earlier, the cloud-centric strategic services, support services, and technology products. During the COVID period, it has been a challenging environment for project delivery in terms of site access restrictions out to customer sites during lockdown. This was particularly an issue in lockdown 1. In the subsequent periods, we've seen sectors be more open, and so project delivery has not been quite so much of a challenge. EBITDA margins continued in their normal range, 18% in the period, which just shows a resilient performance during the turbulence of COVID. When COVID hit in late March, we as a business decided that we would focus even more onto cash flow and treasury management. We saw it as a key indicator of what was happening to the underlying customer base. As a result of the focus on that piece, and in particular customer credit management, we've actually improved customer credit collection in the period, reducing down from 47 days at March to 33 days at September, which has given us that operating cash flow conversion of 124% in the period, which is particularly pleasing to see. And CapEx in the period, that was within our normal range as well, at the 2% of revenue. We're a business that has funded the 27 acquisitions to date through senior debt. We've got very supportive lenders, RBS and Barclays, both of which are fully behind the strategy we've been following. We, at the period end, had a 2.4 times leverage ratio. And for us, it's not so much about the quantum of the debt, it's managing that leverage ratio so that we've got significant headroom below the bank's covenant levels. So the most recent trading update that we've given was the 10th of February. This was really off the back of the Q3 figures, and it was when we reinstated the guidance. So the research note is available from N+1 Singer. It's also available on Research Tree, if anyone would like to see it. The Q3 trading has seen a resilient performance in line with management's expectations. The healthy new sales order volumes have continued. Phil referenced a few of the new wins, Royal Borough of Greenwich, for example, Worcestershire NHS. So it's pleasing to see that we've continued with a healthy pipeline, both in terms of recurring services and one-offs. The furlough scheme, as Ian referred to earlier, we did use it in in the first half of the year. We haven't used it in Q3, and we've got no intention of using it in Q4. All of the team are fully occupied and able to get back out to site, so no intention of using the furlough scheme moving forwards. Q3, we continued with our cash focus, and we saw an improvement again in the debtor days. We've managed to reduce them from 33 days at September down to 28 days, and that's seen us reduce the senior borrowing by a further £1 million during Q3. And at the start of Q4, we've fully repaid the deferred VAT liability from Q1. Despite the challenges presented by remote working during lockdown, we have continued to deliver on the One AdEPT Project Fusion piece, which is the move to a single operating platform, CRM, finance system, HR, email, etc. We've now got 6 of the operating sites now fully integrated and utilising the platform, which represents about 60% of the employees. And we're expecting the last 2 operating sites to migrate within the next 2 to 3 weeks, so they'll be fully live in the platform come the 1st of April. Right, I'll hand you back to Phil, who I think is going to speak to Kevin McEwen, one of the vendors in relation to an acquisition we did, ACS.
Thank you very much, John. Much appreciated. By the way, I've seen some questions coming through, so please keep them coming. Ian will be running a Q&A at the end of this session, hopefully answering many of the questions that are being posted on the system. Okay, so let me just, before we go into the Q&A, just a couple of slides just to introduce ACS. We're an acquisition vehicle. We consolidate and we deliver benefit as a result of that consolidation. So we thought that as part of explaining the story of AdEPT, we'd introduce you to a recent acquisition, ACS, conducted in 2019. And the press release for the acquisition absolutely wrote itself, which makes the logic of acquiring the team so powerful. They live in our world. They provide IT solutions across both commercial and public sector, but particularly education. They have some complementary software support expertise around Sage and a management information system for schools called SIMS. So they bring some added value to the table. Based in Doncaster, they were able to consolidate our presence in the north of England and create a great platform to cross-sell our services into that client base. So back in 2019, the press release was a very easy one to write, explaining why we'd acquired the business. So what I'd like to do is to have a chat with Kevin, who was around at the time, one of the principals, and is still very much part of the AdEPT business. So Kevin, thank you very much for joining us at this Capital Markets Day.
No problem. Afternoon, everybody.
Okay, so let's dive straight in. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I am Kevin McEwen, Managing Director of AdEPT Education, formerly ACS. My business was acquired by AdEPT around 2 years ago. So in terms of my background, from a young age, always interested in IT, networking, getting underneath the covers in terms of technology. That proved to be, good experience before taking a jump to start my own IT business around 18, late teens at the time. Career path, obtained a number of Novell Microsoft badges, and I had an IT role looking after a pharmaceutical company in Doncaster, but I always had that desire to start my own business and start up an IT firm. So I built ACS from the ground upwards, literally using initially our front room, then upgraded to our garage as a headquarters. The business was formed approximately 25 years ago, family-run organisation, and I've really enjoyed the process. And as a person, I'm very well motivated, very goal-orientated, target-driven, always got tremendous satisfaction in business life and recognition from being successful and the benefits that's brought me and my family.
Yeah, we've certainly seen that continue in our working time together, Kevin. And isn't it fascinating how many IT businesses are truly started in garages? It's quite hilarious. So, You've built a business in Doncaster over many years. Yeah, what's that journey been like, Kevin?
Well, it's a good question, Phil, because the ups outweighed the downs, but a lot of blood, sweat, and tear moments. Like I say, it was started from scratch. Main challenges were typical of any startup business, really, right in the early days, sort of raising initial capital to help me support the vision. I was still living with my parents at the time. Moving out of the garage into our first business unit. Business was 24/7, couldn't have no time off. It was pretty hectic. Recruitment headaches. When to bring in the right staff and at what level and what salary. But challenges from a sort of commercial viewpoint. We always intended on IT support for businesses as our sole product, really. And the core vision was what we wanted to be South Yorkshire's #1 IT support provider. So I think one of the major challenges and turning points was the decision to move into the education arena as such. That the service that we provided to local business for some time, it started to become a demand for local schools and then, of course, in time, academies.
Okay, and then next question is a very obvious one. You built this business from scratch over many years, but at some point, you decided to realise that investment of time and effort. So, what motivated you to sell your business, and in some respects, more importantly, what were you looking for in an acquirer?
Well, the opportunity to sell, Phil, came by chance, really, when we received a call from an M&A sector specialist who asked the question, would we, as an IT provider, be interested in working with them to maximise the business's potential? But in terms of what we're looking for in an acquirer, sometimes it's always perceived as financial gain for an individual, but, we wanted growth. We wanted to find a proper home for the company with a value-enhancing acquirer that could enable us to accelerate and flourish. The market was competitive. And we also wanted an acquirer that particularly had a strong education presence to reflect our core customer base. But obviously, there's staff synergies as well, in any business sale. But I wanted to make sure that we were working with an organisation that would retain the workforce, the core people that had got us to where we were at that point in time, and give them a career path in a larger environment. And of course, the financial reward had to be right, because I've been running the business for over 20 years.
Yeah, it's a fascinating combination of factors. It's not just one, as in the price paid, but it's the good home for the business. I think that resonates with a lot of our acquisitions. So, okay, so let's move on to the. We're on this capital markets day to talk to either existing or potential investors. So one of the key things then is bringing those smaller companies on, managing that downside risk is making sure that we do that in a brilliant way, so that momentum that you've built up in building the company continues. So what's your experience been in terms of becoming part of the AdEPT business?
It's been great, Phil. Really positive. That's not just my viewpoint, that's company wide. And like I say, we had a straightforward delivery on synergies, retained the majority of the core Doncaster team. Objectives made very clear. AdEPT outlined what we could bring to the group and how we could be a geographical extension to the existing Orpington-based education business. We formed an education division, which has been a great success. And of course, we've opened the door to the opportunity of cross-selling the product base. We always had an open and honest engagement with AdEPT, with a number of meetings with other prospective acquirers. But to be honest, from a very early age, we realised that AdEPT were the right company. They were very, very impressive. I think with the approach from Ian, our chairman, he was very honest and upfront, and we were a great fit. We're really well matched. Ian showed a great passion in terms of AdEPT, and it matched the passion I've got for ACS.
Yeah, I think that personal connection is actually crucial, isn't it? And it's been great to see that carry through, and it's been great having you as part of the team. So, okay, so that's the first piece, which is managing that downside risk, keeping that momentum going. But the next piece is cross-selling. So, we brought you into the team. We have some capability. One of the key reasons for acquiring companies is that the combination of the two is better than each of the individuals. So 1 + 1 = 3. So, what's been your experience of that cross-selling of services into your customer community?
Well, this has been a huge benefit and a huge highlight in terms of cross-selling, various services. We've always been a very successful company in terms of introducing added value and solutions into our customer base. But now gone are the days of outsourcing, jumping into the market to try and find a solution and trying to find a different solution to match a particular requirement. We've successfully implemented a number of AdEPT products across our customer base, adding, like I say, that core value. And just to recap and name a few, education specifically, some of the customers have benefited from a centralized cloud-based web filtering portal and reporting system. This ticks the boxes in terms of the block and allow list for internet activity and safety. That's aligned with our Orpington office. Hosted platforms for SIMS. SIMS is the method in which schools perform electronic registers, assessments, attainment, sickness, etc. Again, always on-prem platform, now available in a secure and safe environment, hosted. VoIP, internet-based telephony. Always found that as an IT provider, you stumble across telephony opportunities where you get asked, look, we want a phone solution. Can you deliver it? And we did it, but it wasn't really our core theme. Now we bring in the group telephony division, and it's a perfect fit. Cloud backup, previously outsourced to a number of different providers over the years. Now in-house, controlled by our own techie team. And, it's just a great offering with plenty of confidence backing it up.
No, we've certainly seen that. I know you and I have done several reviews of account plans, and there's been some great cross-selling experiences. So wonderful. So let's take it from the generic to the specific. Let's pick a customer case study. Is there a particular client or project that has given you most satisfaction over the last couple of years?
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many to mention, but I think to pick one that stands out, it's probably construction testing solutions known as CTS. They're a leading provider of on-site testing services for the construction industry, including quarry products and civil engineering. And if I look at where we've taken them in the last 8 years compared to where we've taken in the last 18 months, obviously, in line with their business plans and expansion, but we've delivered via our product portfolio a detailed roadmap and successfully implemented a full cloud provision. So the on-prem servers are now gone. There's 10 servers hosted in the Nebula solution. There's a centralized internet facility across all 5 locations that are fully managed and secure. We've implemented our own DR, disaster recovery backup strategy, again, across all sites. Telephony is a great fit. We've used, our telephony division to install the VoIP platform. And very recently, there's been a full implementation of hosted cloud Sage 200 suite of accounts. So a big, vast array of products that has generated a real success story.
Yeah, certainly. We've often mentioned, I think they've taken every one of our services. I mean, it's one of the best case studies, but a great example where 1 + 1 = 3. Bring all of that capability to one client in a managed and highly professional way. So great story. So my final question, Kevin. So we've talked about history and getting to here and working with AdEPT. So now, how do you see the future?
Well, it's been particularly pleasing. I think, Phil, is the vision of the group. I know John mentioned the One AdEPT project, Christian Project Fusion, but that's been aligning our sales and business systems, which I think is going to really enable the group to leverage greater operating efficiencies. But in terms of strategy, we see the ability to offer big cloud-based software solutions such as Sage 200, and this is going to be one of our core strengths of the business model in the future, particularly with recurring revenues. And of course, product portfolio continues to expand and develop. But just finally, the size of the group with regional offices across the country has definitely given us the ability to win bigger customers and contracts, and we continue to develop and evolve.
Brilliant. It's been a wonderful story, and I know I've shared this with you before, but it's been great having you as part of the business, and long may that continue. Thank you very much for your time, Kevin.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'd now like to hand back to Ian, who's going to do the wrap up and then hopefully answer some of the questions you posted on the Q&A.
Well, hopefully some of those case studies in particular and those chats have got you a better understanding of how these 4 product areas sit, and particularly why this whole area of cloud-centric strategic services is the growth area on which we'll focus. And just before we get into Q&A, I've got millions of questions on it. Right? One guy said, if you did buy anything else, where would it be? Anything that strengthened that cloud-centric strategic services. I think it's simple as that one. So if we kind of summarise it, what we're trying to say is this is a company with a very long track record of excellent financial discipline. I'm going to come back to the operating platform in a minute when Andy joins us. There's some phenomenal clients. I mean, we keep talking about public sector today, and when you've got the Parliament and Cabinet Office and all the schools in London and lots of NHS trusts and things, they're easy to understand. But let's not forget that half the business is commercial, and there you're sitting with Coca-Cola and Asos and Citrix and Talk Sport if you're a sport fan. There's all sorts of them, right? Phil's slide earlier on megatrends was basically trying to say is we understand what the megatrends are and we're aligned to them, right? And yes, we have historically been an acquisition vehicle, but some people buy them and don't kind of merge them together. We're a very successful consolidator. We know what we're doing in that bit. Right, now I'm going to bring back just the AdEPT guys. So if we can drop the slide off, I'm going to just get to the faces of my friends and colleagues. Okay, right. Hello again. Right, now we're going to have one new one, okay, you've not seen before. So Andy Lovett, Chief Operating Officer, where art thou? Now I see that's a man at work who's actually doing something useful. Right. Because you've not spoken to Andy, I'm actually going to start with you. Okay, several times people have alluded to what we keep talking about as Project Fusion, and I suppose what I want to understand really is what's it all about, where are we up to, and why is it going to be a big benefit to us? You know, why are we doing it? You're on mute. That's a good start.
Schoolboy error. Apologies, everyone. Firstly, the program's largely been delivered during lockdown over the last 12 months. But the objective was to deliver a single platform that could be deployed across all of the divisions, such that we had common ways of working, ease of cross-selling, speed of integrating acquisitions. And the platform goes from front office, back office, all the way to finance, and allows us to have a total view of all of our clients and what we're doing at any point in time through the use of BI tools.
Yeah, that'll help us to be able to see not just what's going on, but how you move work around and all that kind of stuff. Right. Phil, I'm going to come to you because this one's ancient detail. So a guy called Michael Bowyer, right? We explained before that the old copper network, BT's copper network, what we know as the PSTN, is going to be closed by 2025. Is that a threat or an opportunity, and why?
Well, I always think that forced changes creates an opportunity as long as you're preparing for it. And we've got a 5-year runway, or a little bit less than 5-year runway to really attack that challenge. And it gives us a reason to talk to all of our customers, not just about moving from that copper network to an alternative, which would be a computer-powered telephony service, but also all of the other things that we can bring to the table, whether that's an on-premise or cloud-hosted telephony solution, whether it's the IT solutions we bring to the table. So for me, it's a great reason to engage with the customer base, talk about a problem that they will face, and take them on a journey with us, exposing them to all of the other things that we do as a business. So if you think of it in that context, it's an opportunity. If you just look at like for like, it's a threat, but for us, it's very much an opportunity. And we've formed the Tiger team. We've called it internally a Tiger team to absolutely address that challenge.
Okay. I'm going to go to John. This one's from Don Godwin. You talked about this remarkable success in collecting money in a pandemic, which is kind of counterintuitive, not what we expected. But how's it gone in terms of customers closing down or shrinking?
So I think you showed a slide earlier with the customer base split, and it showed that we were relatively or limited exposure into the really hard hit sectors, particularly hotels, leisure, tourism, etc. I mean, we have inevitably had some customers with business failures. For example, college is a good example of one of those. But equally, we've had customers in sectors which have been hard hit, which have actually increased their level of spend. For example, Norwegian Cruise Line. We've seen some downsizing by customers, of their estates during the recent period, but that's just in line with how they're trading. We would expect those customers in those sectors that are going to recover to bring back those services online at some point. We've seen some impact, but almost counterintuitively, we've actually managed to improve the credit collection in the period.
I mean, it's quite interesting that you mentioned Carluccio's there. I mean, they were a customer for about a decade, and they were constantly wanting to reduce prices and shrinking the number of the sites. And we could see that high street retail was struggling. So in a way, that early win with Carluccio's is what kind of put us off getting further involved into retail and restaurants. So that's. Well, we've got no big ones left, have we, after that one? No. That's cool. And Andy, I'm going to come back to you. People keep talking about Nebula, right? What is it? Why is it important? Why does it give us a USP?
So Nebula is our hosted platform. So we're able to host applications such as Sage 200 on there, our voice solutions, email, etc. And therefore, it's a common portal whereby our clients come in and get served by a one-stop shop that's nice and secure and flexible and scales with their needs as and when it's required.
He made that sound easy, didn't he? The pictures in reality. I'll throw this one to Phil. One of the guys said, I've lost track of who this one was. He said he'd won 16 new logos already with 8x8. But were they existing customers or new ones?
A real mix, actually, Ian, and a real mix of small and relatively large estates. With the case study being 200 contact center users, that's a relatively sizable operation. But we won a site, an NHS site with a handful of users. So a real mix of both existing customers, new customers, small accounts and large accounts. And it's one of those propositions that really does resonate with all market sectors and all sizes of customer, which is great for us.
Okay, Kevin, I'll give you this next one. I don't want to focus too much on education because it's just one of the things that we do. But the interview with John Jackson obviously triggered quite a few comments, right? And one was, so around the UK, who are your main customers when you're pitching for education work?
Do you mean competitors, Ian?
Sorry, competitors. Yes. I knew what I meant.
I would competitors in the education market. I would predominantly RM. They seem to be here, there, and everywhere in terms of deliver a similar service portfolio. Okay,
so it's interesting that he didn't name loads then, because typically what happens is, perhaps not surprisingly, is the capital's ahead of everywhere else. So there's more education services in London, and when you go outside, it tends to be different people compete for different apps, if you like, rather than the whole piece. One of them. Let's try another one. John, in your plans going forward, what's your organic growth assumptions?
So in terms of the fixed line piece, we're obviously facing a structural decline in that piece. So the piece we're really focusing on for organic growth is the recurring managed services. That's the bit we're after. That's the bit that's got the long-term value of our business in it. So we had prior to COVID been hitting 7% organic growth within the managed service recurring revenue stream. We won't be expecting to see that in the current period, given the environment for securing new contracts has been challenging. But we would hope to get back to that level pretty quickly. If eventually we would like to target double-digit organic growth within the managed service piece, and I do see that as achievable.
Okay, Phil, the presentation from AdEPT triggered a question about partners, which was, do you have a kind of ideal number of partners in mind? Are you full now? Would you take some more on? And if you take some more on, what kind of areas would be potentially interested?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, actually. I think we don't have a sort of a finite size, but actually for me, it's really important that if we sign up a partner, we do it properly. So we can execute on the promise. We can talk about that proposition in a professional way. It complements the things that we do. And our team is very well trained. So there's a whole host of things that you need to get right. And equally, finding partners that are as committed to us as we are to them. So you've got that true joint effort. And you can see with that way, if you do it right, you get instant return. And I think that's a really good case study. So in terms of new ones, I wouldn't say we're hunting any particular new additional partnership. One we are doubling down on, though, is Sage and the ERP space. So we really do think that increasingly that level of the IT estate, organisations will look to outsource that and for us to provide a service around that. And Kevin's team brings that expertise to the table. So I think doubling down on Sage is very much a short-term opportunity for us.
I'm actually going to answer this on myself, which means it must be quite easy. Right. Okay. Simon says, have you any future acquisitions planned? We've had a standard answer on this for donkey's years, which is we look at things every week and we're massively choosy on what we do. I mean, the last 2 years, we've been looking at like 75 potential opportunities a year, right? We'll never get to the point where we need to do a deal. We'll just do one if we find something that's at a sensible price that enhances what we can do, right? So we'll never predict when we're going to do them. I've rejected 5 this week, for example. There's lots out there, and that's the nature of the fragmented market we work in. One of the questions was, would you ever buy another business that works in the public sector? Andy, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, sure. So we have a real rigorous process in terms of the businesses we buy. It needs to be complementary. It needs to be stuff that we can add to the portfolio. So I think absolutely, I think we would purchase the right business in the public sector if it gave us enhanced capability, either product-wise or geographically-wise.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we can still see is the direction of travel, if you like, is away from the giant companies and down towards the smaller ones. And in public sector terms, even at 60 million, we're still small in that environment. Let me just see if I've missed any other ones coming through. Right, I'll finish with one last one, Phil. Are you optimistic about the future, and if so, why?
Yeah, very much so. So let me explain. I mean, obviously we've had the challenge of the pandemic. We can't ignore that, and that will impact this year's figures. But I think we're starting to see the benefit of our resilient trading model, and you'll see that in the year-end figures that we'll talk about in April. I think, though, the pandemic has just sort of almost like ram-raided IT into the boardroom. It's the board will now be looking at how vital information technology is to the effective running of a company. And I think what we've seen over the last 12 months is a lot of tactical, dare I say, quick fix solutions being put in place to get people through the last 12 months. I'm very confident that when we come out of this, and when that is, we can only predict, but let's suggest sort of the second half of next year, then I think organisations will be looking at their IT estate, looking at how IT has kept them going and how it can empower them going forward, and they'll come to people like us to address those challenges. And the other great thing, Ian, is we're only scratching the surface of the IT opportunity out in the UK. We're a 60 million turnover business with 300 members of staff, and I'm incredibly proud of that. But that's a fraction of the IT spend in the UK, so we've got a lot of headroom to grow.
Well, look, thank you to everyone for spending the afternoon with us. I mean, here in Tunbridge Wells, we've actually got sunshine, which almost needs a photograph, to be honest. But I hope that helps you to understand a little bit behind the numbers and why we say that sort of, we're very deeply embedded now in IT. Anyway, see you soon. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed to Ian and the rest of the team from AdEPT Technology. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll be automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide feedback. Be very grateful if you could just spend a few moments just really give the company your views and expectations. That would be very, very useful if you could. If you access this meeting via our platform, then the feedback page will automatically appear. But if you access via the link sent you by email, you'll simply be asked to log in. But as I say, if you could spend a few moments to enable the company to understand your views, that would be fantastic. On behalf of the management team of AdEPT Technology Group, I'd like to thank you all very much for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session. Good afternoon to you all, and thanks once again.